Hey there guys, it's Salis, and today I have the pleasure of announcing to the YouTuberverse, Deathsmiles. I'm bad at this. And never before has that intro been more appropriate, because I am exceptionally bad at games like Deathsmiles. And it's all because the Japanese style of side-scrolling shooter really does put the hell into bullet hell shooter. At any point while playing these games, there are so many projectiles and enemies on screen that if, like me, you already have to have your PC adapted for your dodgy eyes, that being able to see what you're doing becomes more like trying to spot a single pea in a swamp of baked beans in the dark. But these are the staple of the bullet hell shooter. And once you learn where attention is being charged, then you can sink back into the zone and appreciate the design of the game a lot more. For a start, the game has this entirely creepy, dark aesthetic, which makes any goth like me jizz his pants in glee. But when you factor in the fact that the pick-and-mix bag of playable characters are magical flying anime girls dressed like burlesque dancers and firing various flavours of laser beams and bombs, that's when we have to change our trousers. In case this has all been too subtle for you, this game looks amazing, and the game is so far removed from a bland colour palette, it is untrue. The world is bright and lively throughout, with a few minor complaints which I will get onto, I promise. But the thing that needs to be spoken about here is enemy variation, because for most bullet hell shooters, this is where it lives or dies. Players get bored of shooting the same old crap all the time, Call of Duty, but Deathsmiles doesn't give you the chance to think. At least not think that. It is constantly throwing new enemies at you with each level, and the enemies are all themed for the area you are in. And due to the short length of the average level, these never outstay their welcome, and each level has its own personal boss at the end, and this is where the enemy variation comes into a whole new realm. I'm just going to name 3 bosses, well, describe them, out of context and prove my point. A 400-foot rampaging cow. A skeletal monstrosity that looks like Cthulhu's malnourished bastard brother by way of the mailman. And a giant stylized head that looks like Mount Rushmore came to life and went evil. Need I say more? But onto that little niggle I was on about. The only problem I have with the design of this game is it runs in 4:3 aspect ratio. And while this is largely due to the fact the original game launched in 2007, this is of course the Steam release I'm reviewing, and it's more in line with the display of an arcade unit, on the modern day PC monitor running at 1080p or higher, it's done the thing Symphony of the Night did on the XBLA, and put a widescreen frame around the game, and while these are changeable, they're all fairly bland and a bit distracting. And this is the only bad looking part of the game. It's still, for the most part, absolutely amazing to look at. It's fast, fluid, fun, and chaotic. Much like its soundtrack. But it's not all power chords and explosions. In the brief moments where it's not all laser beam blasty magic way, the music can have some very eerie and interesting notes, which really helps to build the atmosphere of this twisted, monster-filled world. But once the action ramps up, and when I say ramps up, I mean the kind of ramp they used to launch Apollo 11, it does get some very fast and frantic power music, which really helps psych up the player, and once the boss fights rear their heads, that's when the music exceeds the 9K mark. And you really do get an epic feeling as you blast, bomb, and beam a monster the size of the moon into bits. The only bad choices I have to point out in terms of the soundscape are the various grunts and screams of the monsters you obliterate. And you obliterate them en masse. They're not bad, but strictly speaking, when you hear them often enough, they do start to grate, sort of like sitting on a Lego brick. While barely noticeable at first, prolonged exposure will leave a sore impression. Spoiler alert! Mindfuck alert! Wow, that's the first time I've ever had to use the twofer. I hope you're not expecting a fantastic story here. Fantastical, certainly, but this is mostly working off guesswork, since exposition isn't the strong suit of our dear Deathsmiles, but I'll try my best. At some unspecified point in history, a bunch of folks from the real world were ripped through some shiny hole in space and time into the twisted magical world that the game takes place in. And you play one of 4 girls ranging from 11 years old to 17, who must use their magical powers to protect what passes for their new home. Later on you meet another witch called Sakura, who says her dad is the reason the world is so besieged with monsters, so you have to chase him to his creepy doom castle and stop him, close the shiny space hole he's opened, but it turns out that for 1 hour a year, the portal to hell does connect to the real world. Which begs the question, why not open it a bit closer to the time, you prick? It would save millions of lives. But lo and behold, he summons the king of all demons, but once that snuffs it, it turns out Daddy was right. Then you can choose to either go home or stay here and stay magical, like that's a hard decision. Now, if that made any sense to you, congratulations, welcome to the Brotherhood of Tinfoil Hat. Please help yourself to a pint of bleach. Let's be honest, these games don't, strictly speaking, need a story. They're all about the score and being awesome while racking it up. And let's be honest, this game does give you plenty of ways to be awesome. For a start, there are 4 playable girls with a different type of magic they can use, like death, wind, fire, and spirit. These girls come with their own magical monster pets, which pull triple duty of looking badass, a secondary firing point, and an automatic targeting system. While functionally these characters are not really that different from each other, with a few minor changes not really worth mentioning. And let's be honest, the only thing that will dictate your choice when it comes to picking your favourite girl is how close you want to sit next to Jimmy Savile in future. But for the most part, the game has the same controls for all playable characters. 1 button to shoot right, 1 button to shoot left, and 1 button to automatically target anything that looks at you funny. Can you guess which one of these is massively overpowered? That's right, none of them. Because to maintain balance while firing, you are slowed down, making dodging projectiles all the harder. And in order to use the auto-target system, you have to hold the button for left and right at the same time. Or so it says, there's actually another button for it. But this lowers your speed even more. But that's not to say it's useless. Since you can't fire up or down, when the game scrolls vertically, you have no other weapon you can use, unless you want to tank a few hits or waste your bombs. That's not a good idea because you die very easily in this game. Now, when you kill your enemies, you can collect their skulls, and when you get 1,000 skulls, you can power up, increasing defense and attack power, which, if you're after a tip and able to get to 1,000 before exploding, use this on normal enemies, because you only have until your skull counter reaches 0 to use it up. And your final button, which fires a massive smart bomb, is best served for boss fights, when bullets are literally everywhere on the screen, because it makes you invulnerable for its duration, and bosses need these little breaks to reposition yourself and keep firing. Plus, the bombs make the bosses trivially easy, which wasn't something I was prepared for, because these types of games are famous for being hard, and by hard I mean fucking hard. In fact, allow me to quote from the email I got with my review code. As with these types of shoot-em-ups, expect some difficulty, but nowhere near what you'd get in Mushihime-sama, which is another bullet hell shooter which I was asked to review. Never got round to it because it was so bloody difficult. What I got was far from it. Allow me to explain. Unlike the type of thing I expected from these games, there is no severe penalty for failure, other than losing the skulls you've collected thus far. The continue system is seamless. No checkpoints, just pick up where you went down, and with the enemies at the same health they had at the point where you died. In fact, if you die in a boss fight with no smart bombs left, when you continue, you get the 3 you started the level with back. Maybe I've just been spoiled by Dark Souls, but when I fuck up, I expect to be punished, not rewarded. Damn you, From Software, when did I become your bitch boy? But that complaint aside, it's still possible to make the game harder. Aside from shooting for a perfect score each level, it has 3 separate difficulty settings for each level. And this adds more enemies with more attacks and more projectiles all over the screen to dodge. And if, like me, you're a sucker for punishment, stick to level 3, or the new level 999, which has been added for version 1.1. And that is a more pure experience for a bullet hell shooter. And of course, you can share the scores you get while playing the game with your friends, which is where this game gets the bulk of its replay value from. Outside of going through the story with a different girl to advance the Savile scale one more notch, or getting a friend on board for the local co-op mode, which is actually quite fun. I've tried playing it local co-op with myself because I am an idiot and decided to try one hand on each controller. The game features integrated Steam leaderboards, so you can always see how you rank against your friends, assuming they haven't noticed when you post your score. Because the thing about the score system is, it only has 3 letters to work with, much like the old arcade systems, which is a hilarious nod to the old school days of high school tables filled with poo and ass, and one boring man named Tim. So if this is your kind of thing, I'd say go nuts, but personally chasing higher numbers just isn't for me. I don't like being reminded that I'm shit. So, in conclusion, Deathsmiles is a fun, action-packed bullet hell shooter with a crazy amount of detail paid in just the right places to make it a fun, exciting, if not slightly creepy experience, and with plenty of fun and challenge that hold your interest for as long as it aims to. If you're into these kinds of shooters, then grab your wings and your magic staff and prepare for madness. So despite a handful of minor irritations, I've got to say I'd give Deathsmiles a good 8 out of 10. So thank you all for watching this review of Deathsmiles. If you have any questions or comments, you know where the box is by now. And until our next review, I've been Salis. I'm off to smile at death, and I'll see you next time.